Ambassador Crix Valen stood before the Galactic Economic Council, his four tentacles trembling in a way that made the assembled species extremely uncomfortable. The Torvalian ambassador had been sent to Earth 6 months ago with a simple mission: study human trade practices, document their economic systems, return with recommendations for integration into galactic commerce. What he had returned with instead was something that had caused 3 economic advisors to request immediate medical leave and one to simply resign without explanation. "Honored council members," Crix Valen began, his voice modulator struggling to keep up with his emotional state, "I must first apologize for the delay in my report. The additional time was necessary because I had to confirm multiple times that what I witnessed was not some elaborate deception designed to confuse our species." High Arbiter Thessalon leaned forward in her crystalline throne. She represented the Methali Collective, the oldest trading civilization in known space. Her people had invented interstellar commerce. They had written the fundamental laws of galactic economics that every spacefaring species followed without question. "Ambassador, we received your preliminary transmission. You mentioned anomalies in human trading behavior. Please elaborate." Crix Valen activated the holographic display behind him. Charts and graphs appeared, filled with data points that seemed to move in random patterns. "Let me start with what we expected to find. Every civilization we have ever encountered operates on the same basic economic principles. Value is determined by scarcity. Prices rise when demand exceeds supply. Rational actors always seek to maximize their personal gain. These are not theories. They are universal constants, as reliable as the speed of light." He paused, his main eye rotating to look at each council member individually. "The humans break every single one of these laws. Not sometimes. Not occasionally. Constantly." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Karathi trade delegate made a sound that translated roughly to amused disbelief. The Ventari ambassador simply blinked her 7 eyes in confusion. "Ambassador Crix Valen," the Karathi delegate spoke up, "surely you exaggerate. Perhaps their mathematical systems simply express these principles differently. We encountered similar confusion with the Drellith before we realized they counted in base 12. I wish it were that simple." Crix Valen brought up his first piece of evidence. "Let me describe what humans call a farmer's market. This is a gathering where producers of food items sell directly to consumers. Basic economics dictates that each seller would charge the maximum price consumers would tolerate, correct?" The council members nodded. This was elementary. At a human farmer's market, I observed a seller of fruit who had grown more than she could sell. When I asked why she did not raise her prices to reduce demand and increase profit, she looked at me as if I had suggested she poison her customers. Instead, she lowered her prices. She said, and I quote directly, "I would rather people eat my peaches than let them go to waste." Perhaps she feared the fruit would spoil and become worthless anyway. High Arbiter Thessalon offered. That was my first thought as well, so I observed further. I found sellers who would give away products that were still perfectly valuable simply because they had more than they needed. Not to forge trade alliances, not to create debt obligations. They gave things away because, as one human explained to me, sharing feels good. The chamber fell silent. "It gets worse," Crix Valen continued. "I investigated human concepts of value and discovered something that still causes my primary cognitive processor to enter error states when I think about it too deeply. Humans have created entire categories of economic activity where rational self-interest not only fails to apply but where participants actively work against their own material benefit." He pulled up images of humans in various settings, engaging in activities that appeared to involve significant physical effort. These images show humans engaged in what they call volunteering. These individuals are performing labor, often difficult labor, without any compensation whatsoever. Not for family members who might return the favor, not for political allies who might provide future assistance. They perform this work for complete strangers they will never meet again. The Ventari ambassador raised one of her manipulator limbs. Perhaps it is a form of religious obligation. We have seen species where supernatural beliefs create seemingly irrational economic behavior. I investigated this possibility thoroughly. While some volunteers cite spiritual motivations, many are completely secular. When I pressed them for their true reasons, they gave answers that my translation software initially flagged as errors. They said things like, "It makes me happy to help, and we are all connected to each other. And what is the point of having more than you need when others have less than they need?" Krixvalen brought up his next set of data. I then attempted to analyze human market behavior using standard predictive models. The results were catastrophic. Our models predicted that when resources became scarce, humans would hoard them and prices would rise exponentially. This did happen in some cases. But in others, humans organized to distribute scarce resources more evenly, often at great personal cost to the organizers. During a natural disaster in one human region, I observed individuals traveling long distances, using their own resources to bring supplies to strangers. When I asked why they did not simply sell these supplies at elevated prices, as any rational actor would during a supply shortage, they became visibly angry with me. One human told me that we are not animals and refused to speak with me further. High Arbiter Thessalon's crystalline form began to pulse with colors that indicated deep contemplation. "Ambassador, are you suggesting that humans are economically unpredictable?" "I am suggesting something far more concerning, High Arbiter. Humans are economically irrational in ways that should cause their civilization to collapse, yet somehow they have built a thriving interstellar society. Their economy should not function. By every model we possess, by every law we have established through millennia of observation, human markets should tear themselves apart. But they do not." Krixvalen brought up his final set of evidence. I attempted to understand human business practices. I studied their corporations, their small enterprises, their market behaviors. What I found defies explanation. He displayed images of human retail establishments. Humans have created businesses where the prices are not determined by mathematical formulas, but by something they call fairness. I asked the human merchant why he did not raise his prices when he knew customers would still pay more. He told me that charging too much would be wrong, even if it were legal. When I asked him to define wrong in economic terms, he could not. He simply said he would not be able to look at himself in the mirror. Their labor markets are equally inexplicable. I found highly skilled humans who chose to work in lower-paying positions because the work was more meaningful to them. I found humans who refused promotions that would increase their wealth because they did not want more responsibility. I found humans who started businesses not to maximize profit, but because they wanted to create something beautiful or helpful. The Karathi delegate interrupted again. "Ambassador, surely there must be some underlying rational principle we are missing. Perhaps what appears to be altruism is actually a complex form of social investment that pays returns over generations." I spent 3 months exploring that hypothesis. I found no evidence to support it. Humans regularly sacrifice material resources for emotional satisfaction, social connection, and abstract concepts like justice and fairness that have no measurable economic value. They have created entire industries dedicated to entertainment, art, and experiences that produce nothing tangible, yet consume enormous resources. And they do this not just as luxury spending after their needs are met. Even humans with minimal resources will spend on emotional satisfaction before practical necessities. Krixvalen deactivated his display. My recommendation to this council is that we approach integration with human markets with extreme caution. Their economic behavior is unpredictable by any model we possess. They make decisions based on factors we cannot measure and possibly cannot understand. They have concepts like loyalty, gratitude, love, and duty. that influence their economic choices in ways that appear completely random to our analytical systems. Most concerning of all, these irrational behaviors appeared to be contagious. During my time on Earth, I found myself experiencing strange impulses. When a human child dropped her small toy near me, I retrieved it and returned it to her without any expectation of reciprocation or payment. The action simply felt correct in a way I cannot express mathematically. When I donated to what humans call a charity, an organization that converts resources into aid for strangers with no direct benefit to the donor, I experienced a sensation of satisfaction that disturbed me greatly. High Arbiter Thessalon rose from her throne. Ambassador Crick-Valen, your report is deeply troubling. You are suggesting that humans have somehow built a functional civilization on principles that violate everything we know about economics. How is this possible? Crick-Valen's tentacles rippled in the gesture his species used to express profound uncertainty. I have only one possible explanation, High Arbiter, and I offer it with the understanding that it is speculation rather than verified conclusion. Proceed. I believe humans have discovered, or perhaps always possessed, an economic resource that we have never identified. Something that cannot be measured in traditional units. They call it various names. Community, compassion, human decency, social fabric. Whatever it is, it appears to generate value through mechanisms we do not understand. It seems to motivate behavior that appears irrational, but somehow produces stable, functioning markets. When humans say they feel good about helping others, I believe they are describing a form of payment we have no currency for. When they speak of making the world better, they are describing an investment we have no framework to calculate. Their economy is not irrational. It is operating on an entirely different set of principles that include variables we have never considered. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, High Arbiter Thessalon spoke. What do you recommend, Ambassador? I recommend we study human economic behavior, not as an anomaly to be corrected, but as a potential discovery to be understood. Their markets may be more advanced than ours, not less. They have found ways to create and distribute value that our models cannot account for. If we can learn to understand and incorporate these principles, we may revolutionize galactic commerce entirely. She nodded slowly. And what of trade negotiations? Should we proceed? Crick-Valen made the gesture his species used for careful warning. We should proceed with the understanding that standard negotiating tactics will not work. Humans will not always accept deals that benefit them if they perceive those deals as harming others. They will sometimes reject profitable arrangements for reasons we may find incomprehensible. And most dangerously, they will sometimes sacrifice their own interests to honor abstract principles they cannot even fully articulate. They are, Crick-Valen concluded, the most unpredictable trading partners we have ever encountered. Not because they are primitive or irrational, but because they have transcended the economic limitations that constrain every other species. They have learned to value things that cannot be counted, traded, or measured. And somehow, against all logic, it works. The council session ended without resolution. The delegates returned to their home worlds with reports that would generate confusion and debate for generations. And across the galaxy, economic theorists began the long, frustrating task of trying to understand how a species could build a civilization on something as unmeasurable and indefinable as caring about each other. The humans, of course, remained completely unaware of the chaos they had caused. They simply went on living their strange, irrational lives, helping neighbors they would never see again, building communities that served no measurable purpose, and operating markets that functioned on principles that the rest of the galaxy could not even begin to comprehend.